The sound of coins hitting the counter felt louder than anything else inside the busy supermarket. It echoed, sharp and trembling, as though the metal itself carried the weight of her shame. Daniel Hayes stood in line behind her with his little son Caleb. And for a moment, everything around him, the chatter, the beeps of the scanner, the squeaking carts, blurred into silence. All he could see was the woman in front of him, her hands shaking, her eyes red-rimmed as she tried to count her last few pennies. She wore a faded lavender sweater, her blonde hair tied back in a messy bun, the kind people make when they're too tired to care how they look. The small carton of milk and a loaf of bread in front of her looked painfully ordinary, yet the way she clutched her coins made them feel like luxuries she could barely reach. For Daniel felt the kind of ache he hadn't felt in years. An ache born from recognizing someone else's quiet suffering and remembering his own. Before the story goes deeper, if you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Daniel Hayes wasn't a man who cried easily. Life had trained him not to. Being a single dad in Denver, Colorado, raising a 5-year-old boy alone after losing his wife Emily in a car accident 3 years earlier, had taught him how to survive storms without showing the world how hard the wind was hitting him. But watching this stranger, this tired mother, count pennies for basic groceries stirred something in him. Not pity. Recognition. Because he knew exactly what it felt like to run out of money, time, hope, and energy all at once. He knew what it felt like to tremble in public, pretending you still had control when everything inside you was falling apart. He remembered nights when he counted coins too, praying they'd stretch long enough to buy Caleb's formula or a gallon of milk. The cashier waited patiently, though her expression hinted at discomfort. The line behind Daniel began shifting, people sighing under their breath, annoyed at the delay. But Daniel didn't look away from the woman. He studied her posture. The slight hunch, the stiff shoulders, the way she bit her lower lip of embarrassment. She was young, maybe early 30s, and worn down in a way that had nothing to do with age. Her clothes were clean but tired, the kind you wear for too long because buying new ones isn't an option. Daniel noticed her left sleeve had a tiny tear near the cuff, stitched by hand. Each detail painted a picture of a life stretched thin. Caleb tugged Daniel's shirt softly, pointing at the woman's little girl standing beside her. Maybe 6 years old, wearing a pink dress with faded stars. The girl held a small stuffed bunny whose fur had long lost its shine, and her eyes followed every coin her mother placed on the counter, as though watching a miracle unfold. Daniel's heart clenched. Kids shouldn't have to understand the meaning of not enough money. They shouldn't have to watch their parents tremble when the woman whispered, barely audible, "I'm sorry. I thought I had more." Daniel felt something inside him shift. A memory flashed. Emily sitting on the hospital bed during chemotherapy, her voice small and apologetic even while fighting for her life, saying, "I'm sorry you have to do so much alone." Daniel had held her hand and told her, "Love doesn't count the cost." But after she died, life certainly did. Every bill, every hour he needed to work, every tear Caleb cried at night because he couldn't understand where Mommy went. Daniel had counted everything. Dollars, minutes, moments lost. Seeing this woman standing there alone with her child cracked open a place inside him he thought had healed. The cashier spoke gently. "You're still short by 84 cents. The woman froze. Her daughter looked up at her. The mother swallowed hard, her eyes filling despite her efforts to blink the tears away. She whispered, Can we put back the bread?" Her voice cracked on the last word. Daniel didn't allow another second of her pain. He reached into his wallet with a steady hand and stepped forward. He placed a $10 bill on the counter, his voice low but firm with warmth. "Please, let me take care of it." The woman gasped softly, turning toward him with wide, unsure eyes. Her daughter clutched the bunny tighter. Daniel gave a small nod. No heroics, no grand gesture, just quiet kindness, the kind he wished someone had given him during his lowest days. The cashier smiled with relief, quickly completing the transaction. The mother whispered, "Thank you," in a raw, broken tone as she gathered the bag with trembling fingers. But Daniel wasn't done feeling the echo of her pain. As she and her daughter stepped aside, she held onto her dignity with fragile grace, pressing the bag to her chest like it was a shield. Daniel watched her walk away with that same quiet tension Emily used to carry when trying to hide how sick she felt. Something told him the woman wasn't just having a hard day. She was surviving a hard life. He paid for his groceries, lifted Caleb into the cart seat, and headed to the parking lot. The sun outside was soft, the kind of daylight that makes everything look honest. Daniel spotted her again near a silver sedan at the far end of the lot. She wasn't rushing. Instead, she just stood there with her back against the car, her daughter holding her hand, as though she needed a moment to breathe. Daniel hesitated. He didn't want to intrude, but he also knew that sometimes one gesture wasn't enough. Not when someone was carrying the kind of emotional weight that made you stop in a parking lot because walking another step felt overwhelming. Daniel approached slowly, offering a respectful distance. She noticed him and straightened, wiping her eyes quickly. Her daughter peeked from behind her leg, still hugging the bunny. Daniel spoke gently, telling her he hoped she didn't mind him checking if she was okay. The woman nodded, her voice shaky as she said her name was Grace Turner Grace, a name that felt fitting. She explained she had recently lost her job, her rent was past due, her daughter Lily was recovering from pneumonia, and everything had hit at once. She said it with the kind of humility that only comes from being forced to start over more times than you can count. Daniel listened, letting her finish without interruption. He understood how hard it was for a person to admit they were struggling. When she apologized again for the scene inside, Daniel shook his head softly and told her she never needed to apologize for being human. Grace's eyes filled again at the kindness in his tone, the kind she probably hadn't heard in a very long time. Something about this woman made Daniel want to help beyond that small moment at the checkout. Not out of pity, but because he knew the difference a little support could make for a single parent. He had been lucky in some ways. Emily's family helped him during the first year after her passing. Grace didn't seem to have anyone. Daniel gave her his phone number, telling her if she ever needed help finding job leads or local programs for support, she could reach out. Grace accepted the slip of paper with slow, careful fingers. She thanked him again, her voice breaking, but this time there was a flicker of hope behind her tears. As Daniel walked back to his car with Caleb, he felt something unexpected, a sense of purpose stirring again. Life had been routine and lonely for him for years. He focused on work, on raising Caleb, on surviving. But today reminded him that kindness wasn't something you gave only when you had extra. It was something that healed you while healing someone else. Over the next week, Grace texted him once, thanking him again and telling him she found part-time work cleaning offices at night. She was grateful, but her message carried exhaustion between the lines. Daniel replied, offering to drop off a few groceries if she ever needed them, making sure she didn't feel pressured or ashamed. A few days later, she accepted the offer. Daniel arrived at her apartment, a small, clean place in an old building, and when Grace opened the door, she looked surprised and deeply touched by the modest bag of groceries Daniel brought. Caleb and Lily quickly became friends, filling the apartment with the sound of innocent laughter. Daniel noticed how Grace looked at them, the look of a mother who wished she could give her child the world, but was fighting to provide even the basics. Over time, Daniel and Grace's paths continued to cross. Not deliberately, but gently, naturally. Like two people who had been walking in darkness and suddenly found themselves stepping into the same stretch of light. Daniel admired her strength, her quiet resilience, her unwavering devotion to Lily. Grace admired how Daniel was raising Caleb with tenderness and laughter despite his grief. They didn't label anything between them. They simply existed in each other's orbits, letting healing unfold slowly. Months passed, and Grace's situation improved. Daniel helped her find a stable job at a local community center. She worked hard, saved carefully, rebuilt her life one piece at a time. Daniel found himself smiling more, laughing more, feeling alive again. Their children grew close, inseparable as siblings. Grace cooked him dinner one evening as thanks, though Daniel felt she didn't owe him anything. But as she stood in the warm glow of her kitchen, stirring soup and smiling shyly, Daniel realized something. He hadn't felt this kind of peace since before Emily fell ill. They weren't rushing. They weren't chasing anything. They were simply healing together. Two single parents learning that sometimes life brings broken people together not by accident, but by grace. And it all began with a handful of pennies. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe.